From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. There's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free.
Come on in, everybody. Today is a particularly hateful day in the House, and so I figured I would go live and we could watch these bills get presented together. The House is just starting its session, singing this patriotic song about freedom as they get ready to take away freedoms. The irony is thick today in the House, ladies and gentlemen. Join us as we watch this thing. I never know how long it's going to take them to get to the bills that we're interested in. There are a couple ahead of them, but we can watch it go down. How many kids in this group are LGBTQ? It's a very good question, Michelle. Very good question. I don't know the answer to that, but percentage-wise, at least one or two, right? In fairness, the kids that come sing before this body, it's an honor to them to come from wherever they're coming from, these rural counties. I think these guys are from Sumner County. They're not here to sign off on what's going on today. They're here because it's an honor to be on the House floor. It's a shame. Maybe one day it actually will be an honor to speak before this body, but they're forever linked to what's about to happen on this House floor. And, I'm usually down there. Didn't make it down there today. For some of you that can't get down there, I figured we would stream it so we could talk about it as this happens today. Again, the two bills that are coming up today, the drag show felony bill, the trans youth healthcare ban, both have already passed the Senate and most definitely will be signed by the governor. So this is really the last hurdle for them, other than, as Robin points out, the ACLU suing Tennessee, which they've already said they will happen. And Michelle says they invited these kids to be honored right before they take their rights away. Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunately true. Probably maybe not the insidious intention, but that's certainly going to be what's happening here today. Just for everybody to know, there's actually, I think, 6 bills that are scheduled to be heard today. Sapicki has a bill, then Clark Boyd has a bill, and then on the calendar, HB 9, HB 1 by Chris Todd and Lamberth. So they're scheduled to be 3rd and 4th. If you guys have any questions between now and then, I'm here to answer them. Christine's question is, did drunk cops can carry guns pass yet? No, that bill has not passed. You'll be happy to know that after the backlash, Joey Hensley has since clarified that I guess the caption was wrong and that's not their intention. The bill is basically the main goal of that bill is to make it so that college students can carry guns on college campuses. So that's their solution. More guns do not make us safer, as we know. I asked Todd Warner, the House rep that's carrying that bill, why not high schools? Why not middle schools? The Constitution doesn't specify 18, so why don't we just have elementary school students carrying guns if that's the answer? Well, the answer is because it's absurd, and that's not the answer, but that's their answer. And we're already at the very bottom in violent crime, and this is not going to help. Melinda says, our legislature is a reflection of the ignorance and hatred in the religious right here in Tennessee. Well, As we say here at the Holler over and over again, Tennessee is absolutely a theocracy. There's no question about it. And I think all you need to do is ask them and they'll tell you. You know, we see Jason Zachary carrying a bill to make the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives state funded. We see Governor Lee steering hundreds of millions of dollars to anti-abortion centers, which he happens to be a founder and board member of one of those that seems slated to receive some of that money. So the lines are being erased, and we are a theocracy. And as Melinda points out, that is in large part what we're seeing in a lot of the legislation and bills that are being presented on the floor, especially today. So again, what we're doing here right now, we're waiting for the drag show felony bill, the trans youth healthcare ban. We'll stream them so you guys can see them right here, and we can sort of talk about them as they go. We did this a couple times last session, and
probably at midnight as I was trying to pull a kid and a calf across the road. So we have had amazing time bonding. But this week is National FFA Week.
Sorry, she threw me. Oh, it's FFA week. FFA week is John Rose's wife, Chelsea, was an FFA when he met her. So right there is about how old Chelsea was when he initially met her as her tutor. He was in his 40s. She was a teenager, and he tutored her and eventually married her, and that's his wife and the mother of his children. And last year, when he showed up on this day, I asked him about that. That video is searchable on social media. So FFA Day always reminds me of that. But again, we're going to watch these bills when they come up, and we will talk about them, you know, as they have their back and forth. There are some new rules in the House this year that only 5 minutes per member. So discussion will probably go quick. You know, they do that intentionally, probably because they don't really want to talk about these things. They just want to pass them so that they can go back to their various districts and brag about it. Oh, there's John Rose on the right. You can see him. There he is. Oh, he always shows up on this day. There he is. Far. You're right. That looks like it's him. I believe it is. And again, he has a very personal connection to this day because this is when he met his wife. She was in this program. He ended up helping her with her college career, and then he married her. And he now shows up on this day. So feel free to Google that and look at the history of John Rose and Chelsea and FFA. And then they turn around and call Democrats groomers and pass bills like this drag show felony bill, which, as we all know, is based in right-wing fear-mongering, an assault on the freedoms of everybody. And that's the main thing that we need to keep in mind is these are small government, quote unquote, Republicans that are using the state to crack down on the freedoms of Tennesseans that they disagree with or don't like. So they are anything but small government. There's a lot of hypocrisy in this building. And today it's going to be on stark display. So I didn't make it down there today, but I did feel like this might be a good day to do what we did last year, which was stream it like this so we can watch it all together. They're in welcoming and honoring right now, which is you can stand up and welcome people who are there from your district, that kind of thing. We can watch for a second.
All right, Representative Wright, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an extreme honor and pleasure that I rise on the floor of the House today to recognize the 16-year legend of the House of Representatives. Please make welcome Harry Brooks.
And while they do this, if you guys have any questions feel free to ask. We're constantly scrambling to keep up with
Representative Williams.
the nonsense that goes on in this building.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So make sure you
FFA group that was just in here,
subscribe to our various channels and you'll see it that way.
today, I wanted to wish him today.
There's Ryan Williams. He is
29 again, he says.
the king of voter suppression. He likes to kill all the voter ID bills.
And his lovely wife, Chelsea, welcome them back to the Hill. Thank you.
Known for his bow ties. He's out of Cookville. Cookville. I know I say Ville too much for my Tennessee speak. Still hasn't kicked in yet.
County Commissioner out of Knox County that served with some of us here from Knoxville, Hugh Nystrom, and his son Trace. He is here working on his Eagle Scout award, so I wanted to welcome them. But then I also
There has been some pushback to these bills. If you guys saw a couple weeks back, there was a rally against the anti-drag and anti-trans bills right outside the building. There's been some powerful testimony from parents and trans youth, but it hasn't slowed it down at all. And there's Tim Rudd right there, front right. He has carried a lot of the anti-trans bills. He's carrying the other anti-trans care ban from Speaker Sexton specifically, which it bars TennCare from contracting with any insurer or MCO that covers trans care anywhere in the country. So that one is really the tell because it shows that this is not about kids. It never was. This is about declaring with the power of the state that trans people don't exist. Gino Bolso called being trans a fantasy and fiction this week, right to the face of mothers who were there to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That's what they think.
All my constituents, but I have my most two
So this is not about protecting kids. That's the bottom line. This is one of the new members, Brock Martin, another bow tie guy.
Here today with me as well, Krista Martin on the floor with me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Boyd and Representative Hale and I would like to welcome.
Oh, there's Susan Lynn. Susan Lynn is who carried the abortion ban and lied about it on the House floor, saying that there were exceptions when there weren't. She is also a QAnon believer.
Representative Martin of Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Michelle is right that they don't care who dies.
Man in our community.
These are merchants of death in a lot of ways. I completely agree with you, Michelle. Greg Martin is a new member, and he has a bill to allow the mechanical restraint of special ed kids.
I wanted to honor him and ask for just a moment of silence.
So as they feign godliness, they legislate hate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've got the 3 pages up there behind you. They're from Brewston, Hollow Rock, Brewston Central High School.
This guy I have literally never seen before in my entire life. Did not know this guy was a thing. So I will be sure to look into Tandy. Had no idea. Yes, mechanical restraints. So I don't know what that means exactly, but that's what the bill says. Greg Martin's bill allows SRO. I'm assuming it means handcuffs, but who knows with these guys.
With Mr. Chance Young. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Kiesling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm absolutely thrilled to have 3 of our FFA chapters here with us today. To your left, members, and I'm going to ask the Macon County and Red Walden Springs chapter members to please stand. These are our future District 38 leaders. Thank you all. And to your right, we have the Mark Twain.
It's just kind of sad, you know, like how much good they could be doing
Make these future leaders welcome.
With all this power, I mean, you can see it's overwhelmingly white men. I think there's 10 women in the entire House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm
And this is what
pleased to
they're focused
welcome
on.
in the chambers today some of our directors of our pregnancy resource
This is
centers
Deborah Moody.
across the state.
Oh, pregnancy
And all
resource
board
centers. That's her
members
thing.
are invited immediately after session to go to the old Supreme Court room downstairs below us, and they will be down there, and come see your director. Please come join us.
She had to be able to honor the anti-abortion centers and has said on the record that there's no such thing as safe sex. Meanwhile, our teen pregnancy numbers are astronomical, in large part because we bury our heads in the sands and act like abstinence is a real answer, as opposed to teaching kids how to be safe.
Representative Hale.
I want to ask the members if they would to help me welcome. We've got 4 of our FFA chapters here today from the 40th District, Cannon County, Smith County, DeKalb County, and Gordonsville, and also my son playing.
While they're checking everybody in, let me know where you guys are out there. I'm always interested to hear where you're checking in from.
Today.
Representative Haston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please help me welcome the Perry County High School FFA up here to my left.
Kirk Haston
Thank y'all for being here.
played for Indiana University basketball player. He's like one of the more reasonable Republicans up there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here with the Williams of Sumner County, Representative William Lambert, Representative William Slater. I am honored today to welcome all of those folks, FFA chapters from Sumner County, from Beach High School, Liberty Creek High School, Station Camp High School, Portland High School, and White House High School. If you are here and your name was called, please stand up so this floor can honor the future leaders of this state. And did I forget Hendersonville, which was the top of my list? Thank you all for being here.
Representative White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we continue to recognize individual chapters, I just wanted to stand up and honor all the young people here this morning of FFA.
Bean Station.
I want you to know just how much.
Is that Jerry Sexton territory?
And the quality of life that you're
Jerry's not there anymore.
We're really going to look forward to your future.
There was a lot of turnover this session, more than I've seen.
Thank you very much for being here.
Something like 20 new members or something. And it seems like a lot of the more reasonable Republicans were chased away. Eddie Manis left.
Thank you, Mr.
Curcio. I mean, not that these are people I agree with on anything, but
things are going to get heated in here today, but that doesn't mean that the room also needs to be hot. Could we get the air turned down a little bit?
Once we flip the switch, that means you're in for the cold the rest of the session. It's supposed to get cold this weekend. We'll work on it. Representative Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to recognize my wife is up in the gallery over here. We celebrated our anniversary yesterday, and she's always been my biggest advocate and supporter.
I mean, okay, Ed. Like, is that what we're doing now? We're just gonna, everybody's gonna just recognize everybody that showed up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to recognize the Panthers from Lenoir City High School, FFA. Let's give them a warm welcome.
Monty Fritz has a bill to basically let county clerks, seems like, refuse to sign off on gay marriages. And that passed a subcommittee this week. McCalman, that's my rep. I didn't know what he looked like really until just this second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd also like to welcome the Cascade FFA chapter and their advisor, Mike Swafford, and the Shelbyville High School and Community High School from Bedford County. Welcome.
Thank you. Representative Kumar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Welcome to all
Now you can get a sense of why these things take so long.
delegations and members. We admire what you do.
And, you know, just so you guys know,
Especially welcome those from Springfield
the
High
easiest
School
way
in
to
Robertson
pay attention to
County.
what's going on here, just follow us on social media and sign up at tnholler.com to get our emails. We try to sift through this nonsense and pull out the moments that you need to see.
Terrible situation happened to a Smyrna High School student. Y'all probably seen it in the news. Channel 5 had done a great job of covering this situation.
Yeah, this was actually
Young
horrible.
lady, 16 years old, Janae Edmondson, standout volleyball player. She was in St. Louis for a tournament and tragically struck by a car.
Yeah.
Sadly, looks like she's gonna lose both of her legs. And you know, I'm reminded of my sister Vicky, who was a volleyball player at Smyrna High School and a softball player, had a college scholarship. Sadly, she's confined to a wheelchair. But I want to ask the members to really pay attention to this situation because it's become political in St. Louis. The mayor of St. Louis is calling out the local circuit court attorney to resign, Mayor Tricia Jones. It's very interesting. This young man that was 21 years old was let out, charged with
Is he politicizing this?
arrest. He had 50 GPS violations and really shouldn't have been out. And the case hadn't been heard.
He's politicizing this.
Out on this. I couldn't imagine what she's going through, but
I mean, come on, man.
I think there's $300,000 that's been raised on a GoFundMe project for. But I want to call on one of our local athletes, Chairman Scott Sapicki, to just do a prayer for Janae and her family.
Representative Spicky.
He really just tried to politicize that.
Members, if you'll pray with us for this young lady.
Thought we were going to have
Dear Heavenly Father,
a moment.
Lord, we pray for courage for this young lady as she faces great challenges in her life as she moves ahead. We pray for her family, that they have comfort. We pray that she will lead the life that she is expected to lead, Lord, that you've given to her to its fullest. Lord, we pray that she'll be an inspiration to others as she takes this tragedy and steals victory in the end. Lord, we pray a blessing on her and her family and all those involved, that they will see your way, Lord, and your mercy. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Representative Stevens at Representative Sparks' desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to recognize all of the FFA groups from Rutherford County. I'm not sure if they're in the gallery because some of them had a meeting in the hallway with a senator, but I wanted to welcome them and thank them for coming to be with us today.
Thank you.
I think that was unnecessary.
Anyone else under welcoming and honoring? Representative Capley.
Yeah, I mean, we can just go through and politicize every tragedy if we want to, but that's not really the point of this moment.
To honor someone that we lost in our community this past week, the retired former police chief of Linville Police Department. He was also a police officer in
Kip Capley is another one of the new
Lawrenceburg. He was lost last
legislators.
behind many friends and family members.
He has already shown he enjoys hearing himself talk.
We could all please take a moment's silence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Sherrill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Paul Sherrill.
Left up in the gallery. We do want to
This is who filed the bill to change John Lewis Way to Trump Boulevard last week. And he also has, in both the Trans Youth Healthcare Bill and the Drag Show Bill committees, made comments that made the audience gasp with how offensive they were.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would be amiss if I didn't recognize my Clarksburg FFA up here in the top. They're here today. Thank you for all they're doing.
Thank you.
This is quite a bit of welcoming and honoring. I don't usually see it this extensive.
Welcome and honoring. Ms. Clark, next order, please.
Introduction of resolutions.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That all resolutions properly filed be introduced pursuant to Rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar and referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Joint Resolutions congratulatory and memorializing.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing and allowing that S be placed on the consent calendar pursuant to Rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Resolutions lying over.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions lying over be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of bills, Senate bills on first consideration.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that Senate Bills 12, 259, and 263 transmitted by the Senate be held on the desk pending third consideration of the companion House bills.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on second consideration, House bills on second consideration.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bills 1,542 through 1,548 be passed on second consideration and be held on the desk referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Petitions and memorials.
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, we have a brief statement dated February 13th, 2023, addressed to the Honorable Tammy Letzler, Chief Clerk of the Tennessee House of Representatives. It reads, Dear Madam Clerk, please accept the attached application by address from Arthur J. Hirsch of Lawrence County, Tennessee. Mr. Hirsch seeks immediate dissolution of the unconstitutional Board of Judicial Conduct by this legislature on the ground it clearly violates Tennessee Constitution, Article 6, Section 7, judges holding prohibited office. Signed respectfully, Clay Doggett, State Representative for District 70, Chairman of Criminal Justice Subcommittee. Mr. Speaker, this application by address is available for review by any member who wishes to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of the consent calendar on third and final consideration in keeping with Rule 50.
Hang on, Chairman Zachary. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the next order is reports from standing committees, reports from select committees, calendars. Mr. Speaker, the House has a consent calendar.
There we go. All right, Chairman Zachary, you are now recognized.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of the consent calendar on third and final consideration in keeping with Rule 50.
Gentleman moves passage of consent calendar. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, any objections been filed?
Mr. Speaker, item 28, Senate Joint Resolution 159 has been objected to by Chairman
This
Baker.
is how it generally goes.
Anyone seeking recognition on the consent
This is
calendar?
the back and forth as they work up to the bills that they're supposed to hear.
Seeing none. We're voting on the consent calendar. All members' favor vote aye when the
I'm
bill
assuming most of you have seen a lot of this by now, but let me know if you have any questions about what's actually happening, the mechanics of it. The consent calendar is basically bills that nobody has a problem with, I think. And if people have a problem with things that are on the consent calendar or like resolutions, they can bump them off the consent calendar, move them onto the regular calendar for debate and discussion. So the consent calendar is like filled with stuff that I guess is uncontroversial, resolutions, that kind of thing.
Ayes 94, no nays, 2 present, not voted.
So that's why there's no objection to it.
Consent calendar passed. Objection. Most reconsider is table. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a regular calendar.
Call it first bill, Mr.
Okay, here comes the regular calendar.
Chairman Sapicki, relative to developmental instruction in higher education.
Chairman Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 29 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Speaker moves passage. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment, please.
House Education and Instruction Committee Amendment number 1.
Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment allows a state university to coordinate with a two-year institution to provide remedial coursework, even if the university already offers said coursework. I move to adopt.
Chair Lady Moody moves
I
adoption
don't
amendment number 1.
totally understand what that means.
None. All those favor amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt the next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill authorizes a public institution of higher education to offer remedial or developmental courses or coursework to address student remedial needs. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Speaker renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill?
Your guess is as good as mine what this means.
None. Any objection to the question? Seeing none.
Nobody
All those in
seems
favor of
to
House Bill 29 is amended. Vote aye when the bell rings.
be
Those
bothered
opposed,
by
no.
it.
Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change your vote?
I don't know, Christine. I don't know, but it seems like nobody has an issue with it, so this will pass quickly. And that'll get us one bill closer to the bills that we're here to listen to.
Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Right.
Ayes 95, no nays.
House Bill 29.
I don't know why that wasn't on the consent calendar.
Objection. Most reconsider is table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 486 by Chairman Boyd relative to campaign finance.
Chairman Boyd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 486 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Boyd moves
Hey,
passage.
Angel. Yeah,
Clerk, any amendment's been filed.
they always do this.
Chairman
They,
Boyd,
I
you're
guess
recognized.
it's partly just to move it along quickly, but all the speakers have done it this quickly that I've seen.
Current law, political action committees have to report to the registry at the state level, and the reporting criteria and the frequency at which they report matches what we do as candidates as state representatives. And so I discovered a little known statute that a lot of people are unaware of last year, and that is that if a political action committee makes a donation to any local candidate, it creates a reporting requirement to that county. And so since we now have such a robust system at the state level, and anyone on planet Earth with access to the World Wide Web can look up and learn anything about the political action committee, this would actually eliminate the need to report to local election commissions and would consolidate all the reporting under
Most of the bills that are in the legislature are like this. They're like
On the bill.
hard to understand, gritty details of like what's in the
All
code.
those in favor of House Bill 486, vote aye when the bell rings.
Here they
Those
go.
opposed, vote no. Has every member voted?
Doesn't sound like there will be much objection to this one either. And then the first one is going to be the drag show felony bill up next.
Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 96, no nays.
House Bill 486, having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
All right, here we
House Bill
go.
9 by Chairman Todd and others relative to adult-oriented performances. Mr. Speaker, the Senate
Here
bill
comes
on
the
desk.
drag show felony bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 3.
Chairman Todd moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 3, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 3 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Todd moves passage of Senate Bill 3 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call for First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Halsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill, and I move adoption of House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1 and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Halsey moves adoption of House Amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment?
Thank you, Ethan. Good to know.
All those in favor of adoption of House Amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt the next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Halsey, you're recognized.
Let me know if you guys can hear okay also.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As was stated, Amendment 1 makes the bill. As amended, Senate Bill 3 clears up confusion in the law and clarifies that adult-oriented performances may only be held in age-restricted locations and may never be held on publicly owned property. Under current law, businesses that predominantly provide adult-oriented entertainment must be licensed and age-restricted to prevent children from entrance.
I'm up
This
too
bill
loud?
simply
Okay.
clarifies that if this type of adult-oriented entertainment occurs in locations that are not required to be regulated under the current law, because the adult entertainment is not predominant to that business, like a restaurant, for example, then that business must ensure that the location is age-restricted and children are not allowed to view the performance. The bill only applies to performances that are considered harmful to minors under the state's obscenity laws, which are those performances that are overtly sexual in nature and that appeal to a prurient interest. This is a well-understood term in Tennessee obscenity case law surrounding what it means to appeal to a prurient interest. This is a common sense child safety bill, and I would appreciate your support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Do you renew your motion?
Renew my motion.
Thank you. Chairman Todd renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Johnson of Knox.
It should, Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So we already have obscenity laws on the books. If you are being seen in front of children, it is already illegal, correct?
Chairman Todd.
That is correct.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you. So if you're wearing lederhosen and being obscene in front of children, you will be arrested, correct?
Chairman Todd.
The bill has several things laid out that require that are required before you would be arrested or be charged with a crime.
Representative Johnson.
But aren't those things already illegal if you are being obscene in front of children?
Chairman Todd.
This bill clarifies that entertainment, adult entertainment, within an adult-oriented establishment, regardless of whether a fee is charged or accepted for entertainment, regardless of whether the entertainment is provided by an employee, it also provides that a performance of adult or simulated specified sexual activities, including removal of articles of clothing or appearing unclothed, are illegal.
That was already illegal.
Representative Johnson.
I'm thinking of a whole lot of performances where people remove articles of clothing. That doesn't make it a stripping situation, but you can remove a jacket. You can remove, is that including this as well?
Chairman Todd.
Things that are not sexualized would not be included in this.
So vague.
Can you define for me female impersonator?
Mm-hmm.
Chairman Todd.
Mr. Speaker, that is something that you would have to refer to the law that we already have on the books for. I do not have that definition memorized.
Representative Johnson.
Is there a definition in the law for a female impersonator?
Chairman Todd.
Mr. Speaker, as amended, Senate Bill 3 clears up confusion in the law and clarifies that adult-oriented performances may only be held in age-restricted venues.
He doesn't have answers.
Never be held on publicly owned property. Under the current law, businesses that predominantly provide adult-oriented entertainment must be licensed and age-restricted to prevent children from entrance. This bill simply clarifies that this type of adult-oriented entertainment occurs in locations that are not required to be regulated under the current adult entertainment law because that entertainment is not predominant to the business, such as a restaurant or some other venue. Then that business must ensure that the location is age restricted, that minors must not be present, and the children not be allowed to view the performance. The bill only applies to performances that are considered to be harmful to minors under the state's obscenity laws, which are those performances that are overtly sexual in nature and appeal to a prurient interest. 3917-901 defines harmful to minors that quality of any description or representation in whatever form of nudity, sexual excitement, sexual conduct, excess violence, sadomasochism, abuse, when the matter or performance, A, would be found by the average person applying contemporary community standards to appeal predominantly to the prurient, shameful, or morbid interest of minors.
Representative Johnson, you're out of order. You can.
He's filibustering her.
But we will not take.
And she only has 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Chairman Todd.
That's why she's yelling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. B is patently offensive to prevailing standards in the adult community as a whole with respect to what is suitable for minors.
He's running out her
And
time.
C, taken as a whole, lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for minors. There are other definitions as well that deal with adult-oriented establishments, but I hope that answers the question. Mr. Speaker?
He's running out her clock.
Thank you. It doesn't answer the question, actually, because what we're doing is this is going to have a chilling effect on things that aren't obscene performances, because I haven't seen obscene drag performances, but that is the target and the thing that we are targeting here. And so the reality is we are violating people's First Amendment rights. We're having a chilling effect on how different people do performances. We have drag queen being.
Very well. Representative Harris, you're recognized.
He ran out her clock. That's what happened there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So for clarity, two things has to happen in order for someone to violate this legislation. That would be, one, a minor would have to be present, and two, it would have to meet the definition of harmful to a minor. Absent of those two parts, would that be the understanding of this legislation?
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This addresses adult cabaret entertainment. And that means in the bill, it says adult cabaret entertainment means adult-oriented performances that are harmful to minors, as I just read the definition of, as that term is defined in 901, and that features topless dancers,
Now he's going to read
dancers,
more
exotic
definitions.
dancers, strippers, male
Tory
or
is the
female
only out gay
impersonators, or similar
legislator.
entertainers, and this is required, include a single performance or multiple performances by an entertainer. Entertainer then is defined.
Just
in the
reading
bill as
definitions to
meaning
stall.
a person who provides entertainment within an adult-oriented establishment, regardless of whether a fee is charged. I'll skip over to the next section. A performance of actual or simulated specified sexual activities, as I just read, are included in that entertainer definition.
Representative Harris.
For clarification, adult entertainment, adult cabaret entertainment, by definition, here is an adult-oriented performance. Many of our communities host annual family-oriented LGBTQ pride events each year. So this would not apply to those since those are family-oriented, correct?
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not my place to determine what is going to apply here or not.
What?
The language is extremely clear, much more clear than I believe what we have in code at the moment. And Mr. Speaker, I just believe this will make it much easier for the public to determine what is exactly appropriate for children and what is not appropriate for children and what can be performed in their presence or without their presence.
Representative Harris.
Who will be responsible for enforcing this law?
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Responsible parties for enforcing laws in this state is not changed by this bill.
Representative Harris.
Who will be responsible for enforcing this law?
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The same folks that enforce the laws currently will be enforcing this law.
Representative Harris.
Have there been any instances where this has been, where an adult cabaret in public has been harmful to youth?
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This past year in my community, we had a local group decide to do a quote family-friendly pride or a family-friendly drag show. And when they listed this as family-friendly, my community rose up. We filed an injunction against this group, actually against the city of Jackson, because our city mayor was endorsing this and refusing to use local ordinances to prevent it that were very clearly set there to prevent this type of activity in front of children. The end of that, after spending several $1,000s of individual donations, we had folks come from all over the community donating to this effort to stop this from being in front of our children. It was forced to be indoors and 18 and up only. And I was asked to come up with legislation that would make this much more clear. It came down to a definition, I found, a definition of the word cabaret that is not in current law. And when, as I understand from talking to our legal team, when you don't have something defined in law, then you go to the dictionary. So we went to the dictionary, and the word cabaret can mean either a performance or it can mean a location. So we've certainly felt like, and my community felt like, it was both. It could be both. But we took that to court and got the injunction and got it moved to indoors and away from kids. And that's exactly what the way this bill is structured. Doesn't prevent those performances. It certainly says that they must not be held in front of minors, and we intend to uphold that and expect our law enforcement across our great state to uphold that principle and uphold what we pass here in this legislature.
Representative Harris.
This was the wrecking headline about that.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker, and good morning to the sponsor. I'll tell you one thing I learned is not to ask a question until after I finish making my statements.
That's right.
The issue that hits me, and I can't see the sponsor, I wish I could, so he could see me. There we go. The issues that hits me is in section 1, and it's because we have language in there that is specifically calling out male or female impersonators. That's a problem for me. I was sitting and making a couple of notes of male or female impersonators who have been on TV regular for decades, for male or female impersonators who are in the movies, the theaters, who are in the plays that often come to public venues. And I came up with Martin Lawrence. I can't remember what the name is of the individual, the Shanae. That's a first. that's now in the records. Tyler Perry, Big Mama, number of movies, family oriented, but at times there are suggestive scenes or comments or movements in that movie. Red Skelton. Now, I was a little boy when I was watching Red Skelton, for those who are trying to date me. Flip Wilson, Geraldine. From my understanding of the amended bill, the amendment on House Bill number 9, all of those would be forbidden, and they would be committing, I think you moved it to a type A misdemeanor. All of them would be breaking the law once this bill passes. And I just don't understand why we had to put language in that spoke to male or female impersonators. It just doesn't make sense to me. I've gotten in most of what I want to say, so I'd be interested in hearing your response, sir.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would clarify for the members that the wording in that paragraph is copied out word for word of the current law that we have on the books. We haven't created any new language in that paragraph, maybe by adding an S or something, similar entertainers maybe. But the rest of that is copied straight out of the law. As a matter of fact, this amendment that we have that makes the bill, there was in the Senate version, there was one phrase there that was left out of what the current law has. And so we added that back in, and to make it, again, consistent with what's been on the books for literally decades, that was passed long before this majority was in place. So that's been there. That was what we dealt with this past summer in my community. That's what folks went to when they looked up what can be done about this type of performance in front of our children, and saw that and said, wait a minute, how can we have such a thing in this community in a public park when it clearly says male and female impersonators cannot be in those locations? And so that's what started the whole discussion around the law and around this particular advertised performance and what we could do about it.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. And I think you just told me that male or female impersonators is in current law. I'm not asking a question right now. I'm gonna wait until I get to the end of my time before I ask another question. But I myself actually had a bill that I took over from Curry Todd, as a matter of fact, that dealt with adult cabarets. I don't remember seeing that language, and I still would say to you to hold out the male or female impersonators in this listing of topless dancers and exotic dancers and strippers. I say that unfairly puts them in the.
Chairman Todd.
This 5-minute thing
Thank
is
you, Mr.
crazy.
Speaker, I renew my motion.
Thank you. Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to follow along some of the lines of my colleague.
Exactly, Michelle.
It troubles me that we are including male and female impersonators in the same light as a as a stripper. And you know, there are several organizations and restaurants here in Nashville that do, you know, a Sunday drag brunch that is not sexual in nature, that is normalizing the transgender community, that is showing those that come from your community and from all across our state that they have a place in our state. And by somehow trying to, not somehow, by trying to outlaw their existence, we are further traumatizing Tennesseans. And I guess my question to you, and I would ask for brevity, I don't know if I'm gonna get it, but my question to you is, what is wrong with a transgender person that we need to create a law that makes it so they cannot be in public in front of children? Why is it a problem for a child to simply be in the presence of a transgender person? And I would also challenge the fact that someone is impersonating a male or a female if they are transgender and or in drag, because I don't believe that they are impersonating. I believe that they feel like that is who they are, and why do we need to tell them who they can be?
Chairman Todd.
Mr. Speaker, the language in this is very clear, and it is literally copied out of the definitions that we already have. So this hang up with male and female impersonators, we've had on the books for decades. Previous legislatures passed that. This is just copied out of that and using that definition to expand on it and clarify, again, from based on my experience in our community and what we dealt with that definition. So we wanted to make sure that it was very clear going forward what would be and would not be caught in this. And as I stated earlier, this actual, the other entertainers that are mentioned here, and then the word similar entertainers defined as entertainment within an adult-oriented establishment. And then we get into what's harmful to minors. We've added that as clarity to this so that we don't catch folks that are just expressing their First Amendment rights walking down the street or something. So this is not going in the direction I don't believe where you were thinking it is. I think it actually is making it more clear to everyone to be able to understand this.
Representative Freeman.
Thank you. And I appreciate the answer, but again, I'm going to ask you a direct question. So if somebody is having an all-age drag brunch and there is no nudity, under this law, is that required to be an 18 and up establishment? If it's, because you keep saying an adult-oriented establishment, and I'm not sure I understand that term.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So as it lays out what an adult cabaret entertainment is in the first paragraph A. Then in the next section, entertainer, it defines that, and it's entertainment within an adult-oriented establishment.
So confusing.
A performance of actual or simulated specified sexual activities involving removing of articles of clothing or appearing unclothed, regardless of whether a fee is charged or not. And it's harmful to minors. I mean, this.
Can you have a drag brunch where there are kids?
What we've already had into
The answer is
in
no.
our law for decades, and just clarify so that it's very clear to performers and average citizens as to what is allowed.
Representative Freeman.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to take that as a yes then, that if you were just having a drag brunch at a restaurant here in Nashville, that would be allowed. I just want to say one quick thing in 6 seconds. We're missing this. We need to be accepting of all Tennesseans. And I hope that
Let the journal reflect. Leader Camper's excused. Representative Jones, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was going to rise today and talk about how this bill is a solution in search of a problem, but I believe that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle already know that. This is about erasing a group of people. It's about fear-mongering. It's about waging a culture war. It's about manufacturing a crisis to distract from the failures of this majority to do the will of everyday Tennesseans. And many of you know that. Because the truth be told, if we wanted to address the issue of obscenity and what is harmful to minors, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle would not need a bill in the House of Representatives. What they would need is a mirror. It is this majority that until last year defended a member from Waynesboro who admitted to being a child molester when he was a coach. It was my members on the other side of the aisle, my colleagues, who defended a speaker, the former speaker, despite his continuous acts of lewd and inappropriate behavior, including with interns. It was my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who defended a president who talked about grabbing women inappropriately with no shame. And so if we want to look...
Representative Jones, if you like to stay on the bill, that would be great. If you go off the bill, then we will have this little debate back and forth. So please stay on the bill. Thank you. Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is about obscenity and things that are harmful to children. That is what I'm staying on, Mr. Speaker. If we want to look at what is seriously harmful to children, let's have a bill to ban children from going to these Bible camps where they're being sexually assaulted with the Southern Baptist Convention. Let's go after real threats to our youth. Let's go after the predatory behavior in your own districts, clergy in your own congregations, harming youth. Weekly, we read about this in the news, my colleagues. I'm saying this to just say, let's be serious about what this is about. Let's be serious about what's at stake here. I want to quote a drag queen, an LGBTQ activist, and an icon from the Stonewall Uprising, Marsha P. Johnson, who stated, "How many years does it take for people to see that we're all brothers and sisters and human beings in the human race? You may not agree with going to drag shows. No one's forcing you to go. But don't try and erase a whole identity of people because of hatred and bigotry in your heart. We are constitutionally sworn and take an oath to vote against any legislation that is injurious to the people. Attacks on freedom of expression are injurious to the people. Violating constitutional rights, injurious to the people. Scapegoating and instigating violence against a group of people, injurious to the people. And so I urge my colleagues, I know your leadership has told you to vote on this bill, but vote according to what you know is right. Vote according to what your district knows is not an issue. This is not, I've gotten multiple calls about this bill from East Nashville to Antioch, across my district. Hundreds of calls, not one person supported this bill. Until this was filed, no one even knew this was an issue until the sponsor made it one. And so, colleagues, I ask you to just do something right, be on the right side of history. Let's be about the issues that are serious to everyday Tennesseans who are suffering for denied health care, poverty wages, poor public education systems. Let's not make issues just to win cheap political points. Let's not manufacture crisis just so that we can give ourselves a platform to distract Tennesseans from the failures of this majority.
Representative Jones, you're off the bill. We're moving to the next one. Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Go, Justin, go.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, sponsor. Appreciate my previous colleagues' sentiments about this and the targeting. You know, often, though we disagree with legislation, we try to find the true intent and perhaps the love in a piece of legislation, but I don't see any love in this legislation. I see hate. And so, in addition to that, my concern with this is the breadth of the language, Mr. Sponsor. And the breadth of this language takes direct aim at the local economy of my city. It takes direct aim at the entertainers within my city. It takes direct aim with its small businesses in my community. And so the language of this bill, now, I don't know if you've ever attended a Beyonce concert. Something tells me you haven't. Or a Harry Styles concert, or a Lizzo concert, or a Madonna concert. Your language prohibiting and the breadth, the vagueness in this bill would prohibit those entertainers from performing in my city.
True story.
It would prohibit Beyonce, the Queen Bee herself, who is coming to Nashville this year. This bill would allow me as a district attorney, by the plain language of this bill, to arrest Beyonce.
Yep.
Is that your intended goal here?
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is so interesting to me to hear the opposition to this very simple, common sense bill. Most of you in this room know exactly what this does. You know it's common sense. Anyone that would stand against a bill that is going to prevent minors, children, from seeing obscene sexual activity, I don't know how you claim to be representing anyone. This is common sense. This is protecting children first and foremost. Folks have made up things about this. They've dreamed up things about this. We've got media weighing in on it from all over the world without reading it, without really looking at what it means. It does exactly what I said it does. Very plain and simple. And I would think an attorney of all people would be able to read this and certainly understand how simple it is. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Clemens. Out of order. Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's interesting. We can find common ground here. Nobody wants a minor in an establishment with a stripper. There are laws prohibiting that. But your language here, as a lawyer that features any entertainment that features a topless dancer, you could have male topless dancers. I mean, I guess we're not going to swimming pools anymore if males aren't allowed to take their shirts off. So you got male topless dancers performing in a public venue, and that may or may not have actual or simulated sexual activities or including the removal of articles of clothing such as a t-shirt. I mean, you could have a child. I don't know if you've been to a Send amphitheater. You can watch performances from the street without entering that venue. So you could have a 16-year-old walking up the street looking in a concert at Beyonce, Harry Styles, Lizzo, most any entertainer, and then you're going to allow a district attorney to go down there and arrest that entertainer? You are taking direct aim at Music City, USA, just because you subjectively may not agree with it. Now, we talk a lot in this body about protecting constitutional amendments. So if you want to have the plain language of the Second Amendment protected, then you better want to have the plain language of the First Amendment protected. Because you can have constitutionally recognized exceptions, but you cannot exclude individual classes of people because you subjectively disagree with them or hate them. That is unconstitutional. Your language is vague and it's overly broad. This will not stand up in court. You have wasted all of our time here today by promoting this legislation. I would ask that you at least make the effort as an attorney to clean this up, to bring it within constitutional muster, so you're not attacking my local economy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Amen.
Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the language is extremely clear. We've had multiple attorneys look over this. They think it's extremely solid. I'm very confident our Attorney General can stand behind this and defend this without question.
Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I had not planned on speaking on this bill, but after hearing all the comments, I thought it was appropriate to provide some actual context. So in Knox County, we had a drag show, a family-friendly drag show that was set to be at the Tennessee Theater. There was a Christmas drag show. Video surfaced of this show that showed stripping, simulating of sexual acts, and inappropriate touching. And so because of that, the mayor and I engaged the facility.
There's laws against that, Jason.
Compromises made, but then some videos surfaced that showed exactly what went on in this drag show. And I'm extremely thankful for TBI Director Roush, who is the former chief of police in Knox County, for engaging and actually bringing the promoter on, the promoter agreeing with the director's assessment and then agreeing to scale down that show to make it appropriate for children, which is exactly why this bill is needed to ensure that those acts don't continue in front of children, because that same show 2 days or 3 days after Christmas was conducted in Florida without that same filter and those restrictions. And now the state of Florida is investigating those because there was simulation of sexual acts, stripping in exposure, and inappropriate touching. And let's be really clear.
Illegal,
really
all of
clear.
it.
We as the
Already.
legislature, we have the ability per our Constitution to deem what is inappropriate. And my guess is when we vote and put this on the board, and when we vote on another bill that we put on the board, these were all conversations that happened during the election cycle. And I need to remind this body and remind my colleagues, we picked up 2 additional seats in the House, and the governor, who is a Republican governor, increased his percentage. So we talk many times about a mandate from the voters. We have a mandate from the voters. They agree with us in protecting children, and that's exactly what this bill does. So I remind my colleagues, when we vote here and we vote
Sexton
now,
doesn't cut
and we're
him
voting
off.
on this bill, it is about protecting children. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Todd, for your boldness in carrying this bill.
Out of order.
Let him finish, though, didn't he?
Representative Bolso.
Oh, here we go. Williamson County's
Thank you,
finest
Mr.
right here.
Speaker. I've heard 3 statements made this morning that I wish to comment on. The first is the statement on the bill. The second has to do with the Constitution. And the third has to do with hate. First, it's the obligation of every member of this body to read and understand the bills that come before it. When we look at Section 1A of Senate Bill 3, we see that adult cabaret entertainment is defined to mean adult-oriented performances that are harmful to minors, as that term is defined in 39-17-901.
Very vague.
That provision has been ignored by every question lodged this morning.
No, it's
If
vague,
you actually
Gino.
look at 39-17-901, subsection 6, it provides a definition as to what is harmful to minors. And it provides for 3 things. 1, the conduct has to be prurient. It has to appeal to prurient sexual interest.
Vague.
Number 2, it has to be patently offensive.
Vague.
And then 3rd, it can have no redeeming scientific or artistic value. Now, we didn't just
Subjective.
make those terms up.
Vague,
That's the
vague,
3-part
subjective.
Miller test coming from our U.S. Supreme Court in 1973 in Miller versus California. And when you look at Senate Bill 3, it defines adult cabaret entertainment to include conduct that is harmful to minors, and it doesn't say or, it says and. The conduct has to be obscene as defined by the U.S. Supreme Court in Miller versus California, and it has to involve topless dancers, go-go dancers, and other things.
Not and.
So this idea that somehow just appearing in public as a male, or if you're a female, or Flip Wilson impersonating Geraldine, has nothing to do with this bill. Because to be unlawful, the conduct first has to be obscene as defined by the U.S. Supreme Court and through 39-17-901 codified in Tennessee. And then second, it has to involve topless dancing, go-go dancers, or other such things.
We already have obscenity laws.
That's point number 1. On the bill, look at the bill, read the bill. Point number 2, the Constitution that you just heard about. This bill is completely constitutional. It reeks with constitutionality under the First Amendment because it incorporates
that's
the
for
test
sure,
that
Gino.
our Supreme Court adopted in 1973. The third point is hate. Let me say this about hate.
Oh, yeah, let's hear it.
In this attitude of intolerance that is taking over our country.
Oh, that's
this
laughable.
Dictatorship of relativism. This bill is not born in hate. This bill is born out of love to protect the innocence of children. And I am proud to stand with Representative Todd to support it.
Please. Little hothead. Guy's a little hothead right there.
Representative Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I call for previous question.
Of course you do.
Previous question been called. Any objection?
That means that's the end right there.
We'll go on the board. That's fine. We're voting on previous question. All those in favor vote aye when the bell rings. All those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 74, 20 nays.
Previous question prevails. Let the journal reflect Representative Beck is excused. We are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 3 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 74, 19 nays.
Senate Bill 3, having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1 by Leader Lamberth and others relative to medical care of the young. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized. Oh, Chairman Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The issue, and I certainly understand, and members are entitled to call the previous question on the floor under the rules, but I do think, Mr. Clerk, and correct me if I'm wrong, do we not have a mechanism under the rules that we are allowed to have someone recognized to correct a misstatement made by someone else on the House floor if it is a blatant intentional misrepresentation of the actual facts?
Mr. Clerk. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, I believe what the member may be referring to is if a member's reputation has been called into question, they would have a right, or if their name is called, they would have a right to respond. As far as to clear up any sort of record, that's not the case.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate you entertaining the question on this parliamentary issue. I do find it unfortunate that we are unable, if someone makes a blatant misrepresentation or misstatement of fact, that we do not have a mechanism whereby that can be corrected for the public record. I certainly would hate for this body to be tainted with blatant misstatements in debate on an issue as important as the last bill. And I'm not speaking with regard to different interpretations of the Constitution or anything like that. I'm simple facts about where something took place and where it did not take place. Those things matter for the record, and so I'd just like for us to consider that in the future if we're able, Mr. Speaker.
We would have been on this bill for 2 hours on the other side, misstating according to what other people had said. So it goes both ways. But our policy is if you raise your hand, you go on the list. If you like to clear up someone's information, you have that right to go on the list. If someone calls your name, as the clerk says, then you're able to respond immediately. Or if they impugn someone's reputation, you have the right to immediately respond. Outside of that, we are in the process that we're in. Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill number 1.
Leader Lamberth moves substitute and form Senate Bill 1, probably second with objection so ordered. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move passage of Senate Bill number 1 on third and final consideration.
Leader Lamberth moves passage of Senate Bill 1 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to roll to the hill of the minutes.
Without objection, roll to the hill. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1 filed as House Amendment 2.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd make a motion to move to the Hill.
Without objection, roll to the Hill. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 3 by Chairman Holsey. Mr. Speaker, it was timely filed.
Chairman Holsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to tell you how I got in this mess. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from a man that I know and respect in my district concerned about a couple of things in this bill. Not in the bill, I'm sorry. A couple of things in the findings. One of them was the verbiage. About 3 days later, I got an email from a respected constitutional lawyer that I know in the county next to mine, and he said, you've got to fix this or pull your name off the bill. Then others began to contact me, and then some heavy hitters contacted me, and that's how I ended up here. I want you to understand that my amendment is very short. It doesn't do anything to the bill. It addresses two things in the findings. Here's the first thing. There is a statement in the findings that says the state of Tennessee has a compelling and legitimate interest in dignity of children. I am told that that is a very dangerous statement to use in today's argument. And the reason for it is for two reasons. One, in the Supreme Court a few years ago, when the Supreme Court redefined the definition of marriage, this word dignity was used, and at the conclusion of who won that, they said that the Constitution gives people the right, or it has the ability to create dignity. Clarence Thomas argued against that in a dissent, and he said, no, government cannot bestow dignity, and they can't take it away. He said dignity grows from a seed when a person understands what the founders said, that all men are created. They are created in the image of God. The sad thing is, Clarence Thomas lost. I don't want to lose. This bill is incredibly important. I don't want to lose. The second problem with the state have a compelling interest in dignity is it has scared parents across this state to death, because they look down the road and they say, if the state can say we have a compelling interest and it's in code that we are interested in the dignity of children, then down the road when a parent says you're not going to go to public school where you're going to be homeschooled, and a 15-year-old boy says, no, I'm not, I'm going where I want to go. Then a phone call's made and somebody knocks on the door and says, we're from Children's Services and we're authorized by the state to be interested in whether you are providing dignity to your child or not. They see that as a very big danger. The second thing that this amendment changes is it plugs in a sentence, and it says that all children in the state of Tennessee have a common law right of protection, to be protected against injury by a third party or a doctor or anybody else. It is a common law right. Now, you understand that common law was in place long before the Constitution was ever written. And all you boys that went to law school, you were trained that common law is what a judge says it is. But of course, if that's the case and there was no tangible truth to common law, then you wouldn't need a Ninth Amendment that says the people retain common law. So there's a sentence in here that says that children in Tennessee are protected by a common law right to not be injured by a doctor by cutting off viable, healthy body parts or interrupting the normal biologic functions that go on in growth. They have a common law right against that. Why is that important? Well, because in Dobbs that overturned Roe, common law was referenced 44 times. So I'm going to say to you, if the courts are listening to common law arguments, we need to make them. So that's all this amendment does. It strips out a sentence and a half that gets away from the dignity issue.
Representative, you only get 5 minutes. So my question to you for brevity, as we use today, what would you like to do with this amendment? Because we didn't get there. Representative Halsey.
Thank you, sir. Since it's so important, it's so brilliant, I'm asking that you move, or I move to adopt amendment.
Thank you. Chairman Halsey moves adoption of amendment number 3. Do we have any discussion? Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. And I want to rise today, let the members know, let all Tennesseans know that are listening to my voice that I support this legislation wholeheartedly. I also support and admire my colleague, the chairman, who asked for this amendment to be added to the bill. I must, though, ask to move that this amendment be laid on the table for 2 reasons. The first is, while it does change a couple of words in this legislation, those words are profound. So I believe in our committee system. I do believe that this should have started in the committee system to debate why those words have such profound distinctions in how it changes this legislation to potentially make it suspect for constitutional challenge, and here's why. So my second reason is this. The sentence, and I'm going to read it, the state has a legitimate, substantial, compelling interest in securing a minor's fundamental right, and I want you to listen to this, at common law to be protected from physical harms to their body, including but not limited to interference or with disruption of the proper functioning of their healthy organs according to their biological purpose. But for those 2 words, common law, I would have absolutely no problem with this amendment, and here's why. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no common law, right? Common law, as our chairman said, is when we pass legislation here, that particular statute is interpreted by our judges at the trial level. If the litigants at that particular time wish to appeal because they disagree with that interpretation from the judge, they can appeal to our Court of Appeals. Our Court of Appeals can then surmise on that particular statute, and that's how judges, called case law, creates what's our common law. And what do we do with that when we have a problem and we have an issue that our judges say is common law? We're down here, we're supposed to create that common law, which then becomes statutory law, which then becomes more powerful. It is what we do. Every time we run into something that is suggested to be the common law, Mr. Speaker, we pass a law to make it statutory, to enhance, to increase, to make these children more safe, because we're passing a law that does just that. It's not subject to interpretation from a judge of what the common law means and then trickle down through our court system, and we don't know, because often we have to interpret ourselves what our Court of Appeals and what our Supreme Court justice say for the common law. It's the duty that we have to turn that common law to statutory law, or we place it in our Constitution. And why do we do that? Because that's the ultimate protection that we've sworn an oath to do down here.
I wish I could be helpful here, you guys. I'm lost.
Make better our Tennessee Constitution.
I don't know what's happening.
U.S. Constitution.
No idea.
So there's
out of order.
The common law does not exist. So, but for those 2 words, this debate should take place in committee. And that's why I rise today, with all due respect to the sponsor of the amendment, that this should be laid on the table, Mr. Speaker, and I so move.
All right, proper motion, properly seconded. Parliamentary situation is Representative Holsley has moved adoption of amendment number 3. Representative Garrett has moved that motion to the table. That cuts off all debate for that of the sponsor. Representative Holsley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll just be brief. 44 times in Dobbs, common law was referenced. And because of common law said that a mother cannot kill her unborn child. 44 times common law is referenced in Dobbs, and because
So
of
basically, Halsey is trying to add
that,
an
we got the
amendment.
ruling in the overturn of Roe. So I disagree. with
Halsey's trying to add an amendment about
Second thing is,
something,
I had no other recourse but to add this amendment.
and
to
even
it.
his
I
own
did,
caucus
and
doesn't
I-
want
and
it,
I know
basically.
Going on the House floor is not a choice thing, but it came through none of my committees, so I did not have that opportunity. And this amendment in no way harms this bill. In fact, it does not address the bill. It addresses the findings. So I stand behind that.
Halsey also has a federal nullification law, a federal law nullification bill.
Has moved that motion to the table. We are voting on the tabling motion. All those in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no.
This
Has
will
every
get
member
tabled.
voted? Does any member wish to change their vote?
This is basically them dismissing Halsey's rantings.
Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 51, 41 nays, 1 present, not voting.
The amendment is tabled. Let the journal reflect Representative Powell is excused. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment number 4 by Representative Clemens. Mr. Speaker, it was timely filed.
Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, sponsor. What this amendment does is simply removes the prohibitions on the hormone treatment and puberty blockers, but it allows the law to expressly prohibit the surgical medical procedures. It leaves most of that language intact. It simply seeks to prohibit the surgical, physical, medical procedures that are irreversible prior to the age of 18. Under this amendment, hormone and puberty blocker treatment would be allowed. Those are reversible. And so from the testimony I heard, as interesting as it was throughout the committee process, the big concern with most people was the irreversible versus reversible nature of the treatment. The standard of care in the state of Tennessee is extensive. And before these children even receive any hormonal treatment or puberty blockers, they go through a laundry list of psychological, parental consent before they even get to this treatment. So we also have an issue with the bill as currently drafted and with the arbitrary deadline of March of 2024. You're going to have individuals who are currently receiving hormone treatment in the state of Tennessee who will then have to end that treatment prior to the age of 18, which creates several medical issues, forcing those parents to incur additional costs and go out of state. You have removed the out-of-state nature of the bill or prohibitions, so you clearly don't have an issue with that. But this amendment, let's be clear, this amendment expressly prohibits surgical, medical, irreversible procedures before the age of 18. And also removes some of the recitals which don't go in the code anyway, so they're irrelevant. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for adoption of the amendment.
Representative Clemens moves adoption amendment number 4. Probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, as the maker of this amendment noted, he sits on committees that this bill went through. It went through health, it went through calendar rules on which he has a seat. The opportunity to make amendments in our committee process was there to be debated in the committee system. The recent discussion that we just had indicates that indeed, had he not had the opportunity, perhaps we should entertain it. But here he is
Mike, the name calling is not going to fly here, buddy.
For that reason, I move the gentleman from Davidson County's amendment to the table. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That's a proper motion. Probably seconded. Parliamentary Situation is Representative Clemens has moved adoption of amendment number 4. Representative Reagan has moved that motion to the table. That cuts off all debate except for that of the sponsor. Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that our rules do not prohibit amendments on the House floor and they expressly provide for the ability to file amendments on the House floor, this bill is timely filed in complete compliance and gives my colleagues a final opportunity to do the right thing in this instance. I will be very shocked if anyone votes to table this motion, killing an amendment that will prevent surgical medical procedures on minors in the state of Tennessee that are irreversible for the purposes of the legislation. So I ask that you vote against the tabling motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Parliamentary Situations Representative Clemens has moved adoption amendment number 4. Representative Reagan has moved that motion to the table. We're voting on the tabling motion. All those in favor vote aye when the bell rings. All those opposed vote no.
They're going to kill his
Has every member
amendment.
voted? Does any member wish to change
Most
their vote?
of the parents that I've talked to and the pro-trans supporters supported this idea of making it just about surgeries and not about the therapy, the hormone therapy. But they're going to kill the amendment.
Please take the vote.
Aye, 72, 19 days.
The ayes have it, the motion.
And as I'm sure will be pointed out, this bill actually doesn't ban any surgeries. It doesn't ban any therapy. It only bans it if you're trans.
Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. My amendment is simple. You know, in the committee, I heard we didn't need any unnecessary surgery procedures on minors. I heard it over and over and over again. And so this can't be misconstrued. I'm going to give definitions. So I heard a little rumor someone was going to try to misconstrue this. So reconstructive surgery would be surgery that is for like a child that has cleft palate, or for reconstructive breast surgery after someone has cancer, or reconstructive surgery as someone gets burned. Plastic surgery would come along the lines of breast augmentation, breast lift, liposuction, rhinoplasty, or abdominoplasty, a tummy tuck. So either we're going to be consistent or not. So if we're out to protect children from unnecessary medical surgical procedures under the age of 18, this is the amendment to do that. But also in the committee, also heard these children need to be comfortable in their body. And the word, you got to hear what I said, these children. So I don't know what these children were referring to, which group, instead of all children, we were talking about these children need to be comfortable in their body. So I'm just bringing this amendment to, clarify these means all. And unless we're specifying a group and we're picking out a group, which would be unconstitutional, I know we wouldn't be doing that. So I'm bringing this so all surgical procedures, cosmetic surgeries are banned. Thank you.
Matt Walsh in committee said he'd be on board for this.
All right. He renews his motion. Representative Mitchell moves adoption amendment number 5, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Mr. Speaker, this amendment has absolutely zero to do with the intent of this bill. There's nothing in this bill that has anything to do with that.
That's true. Because it's not about protecting kids.
With that, I move amendment number 5 to the table.
Faison, telling the truth accidentally.
That's proper motion, properly seconded. Parliamentary Situations, Representative Mitchell has moved adoption amendment number 5. Representative Faison has moved that motion to the table. That cuts off all the debate except for that of the sponsor. Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Perfect. He said it for me again. He said this has nothing to do with protecting children. Right. We're going after these children. He said it. You heard him say it.
Yep.
It has nothing to do with protecting children
That's right.
from unnecessary medical procedures. They can get their breast enhancements. They can get their nose jobs. They can get their tummy tucks. That's okay. But these children
Yep.
can't have any medical procedures.
Exactly, Bo.
These children, you know, the one intent of this amendment is not for you to pass it. I know you're not going to pass it. This is for putting it on the record for when this goes to court. These children
That's right.
will have to be addressed, and that's going to be the winning argument. Thank you.
Yep. Faison
Affirmative
fell
situation.
right into his
This bill
trap.
is moved adoption of amendment number 5. Representative Faison has moved that motion to the table. We
Faison,
are voting on the
never
table.
been the
All
sharpest
those
tool in the
favor,
shed.
vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no.
By the way, Faison, also the guy who tried to pants a ref in a gym full of children, so hardly the best messenger for protecting kids. But they'll kill the amendment.
Please take the vote.
Ayes 73, 19 nays.
The ayes have it. The motion to adopt amendment number 5 is tabled. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that brings the House back to the heel of the amendments. House Health Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1, filed as House Amendment 2, same as Senate Amendment number 3.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, withdrawn.
By the way, let me know if you like this format of doing this and we can do it more.
You're recognized.
We haven't done it
Thank you,
much.
Mr. Speaker. Members, we've heard a lot of back and forth on these amendments today. I want to get us back to what this bill does. It is a very simple bill at its core. It bans dangerous cross-sex hormone treatments, puberty blockers, and disabling medical procedures on minors, all minors. I know some have tried to paint this otherwise, and they can argue that all day long, but it affects every single child the same that could be
that's not true.
subjected to these dangerous procedures. Children under the age of 18 for the purpose of altering their gender identity.
That
These
part.
treatments and procedures have a lifetime of negative consequences that are irreversible. Irreversible. When you start cutting off body parts of a child because you're telling them that somehow or another there's something wrong with their body.
Only if they're
and they
trans,
already
though, right,
think
William?
that, it is dangerous. It is
What about
destructive,
circumcision,
and I will
William?
say it, it is evil.
Are you
What
circumcised?
those children need
Is that evil?
love and support, mental health treatment, and time.
They get mental health
because
treatment.
in most circumstances, these teenage children whose bodies are changing so rapidly, they need time to determine how they feel about that change.
His faux
Everybody on this
concern.
floor is a recovering teenager.
Exactly. How
years
about
are
circumcision?
tough. Your body's changing.
How about
You may
circumcision?
or may not have
Exactly.
felt comfortable about that when you were going through it. But when a child has gender dysphoria or body dysphoria, when they are
You just
uncomfortable with their
killed an
appearance,
amendment
the worst
to
thing
ban
that you
surgeries.
could possibly do is say, well, if we just start cutting off body parts or giving you medication that was never designed for this, that will alter your body forever, that's the worst thing you can do.
You just
And
killed
that's
an
not just me
amendment to
saying
make it
that.
only
That's
about
every
surgeries
legitimate
also.
scientific study on this, because scientific evidence has not shown that cross-sex
Keep in mind, there's
medical
another
treatments are
bill
beneficial
to
children or
ban
adolescents.
insurers
In
from
fact, there is
covering
evidence
trans
of
treatment and
harmful
contracting with TennCare. So
Consequently,
this
a
is not
growing
about
number of
kids.
authoritative scientific agencies do not recommend such treatments.
Not about kids.
Instead, they recommend counseling and watchful waiting for gender-confused youth. These children do not need these medical procedures.
William
as
is not a
children
doctor.
to be able to flourish as adults. Again, they need mental health treatment. They need love and
Exactly.
support, and many of them need time to be able
These
to grow
same
up
guys
and
want to
become
force a
the
10-year-old to have a
individuals that they were
child
intended to be. With that,
when
Mr. Speaker, I
impregnated
renew
through
my
rape.
motion.
Exactly.
Legal
The
Labor
hypocrisy
introduces
is
a motion.
transparent.
Discussion on the bill. Representative Johnson of Knox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we've already discussed that the intensive time spent with physicians and families and these young children, and that what we're talking about, a lot of times the hormone blockers and those things are not permanent, and the surgeries that you're referring to are not happening in Tennessee. And the reality is, we are starting to legislate medicine, and out of 99 folks, 2 people in here are physicians.
That's right.
And not necessarily in this area. And so the reality is, we need to allow doctors and families to make those decisions, and we need to be honest about the treatments that are actually happening in our state. We have taken away a woman's right to determine her health care and her health outcomes. Now we've gone into children, but we've also gone into adults with a bill that's coming up with not allowing adults that care.
That's right.
So the reality is here, we're targeting a group, again, just as we were on the last bill, and we are determining that a certain group of folks can't have hair when a physician has an oath to take care of their patients, and that's what they do. And we know that the major health organizations agree with these treatments and understand that they are life-saving in many situations. I just want to caution that this body should not be telling physicians what to do. Typically, I hear a lot of discussion about, families being able to make determinations for themselves. If a doctor and a family feels that taking hormone blockers is going to be healthy and productive and life-saving for these children, then that's a decision that should be made. We do not need to get in the business of legislating healthcare.
Leader Lambert.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Out of order. Representative Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the Provincial Health Services Authority reports that healthcare providers refusing to provide puberty blockers to youth who have started the process can cause a great level of distress, leading to anxiety and depression, and can result in an increased risk of mental health issues. For youth who are already in the middle of this process, what kind of care will they continue to get?
Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And unfortunately, there are children that are being subjected to these substances now. And so that's why the bill, after its effective date, July 1st, any of the procedures that have begun before then.
None of these people said anything about David Byrd.
To actually stair-step those children off of these dangerous medications. It would not be a good idea, according to everything we heard in committee, to immediately just have a halt on that. And so, but over time, they're able to wean them off of these so that their bodies can heal.
Representative Harris.
Was a year long enough to do all of that?
Leader Lambert.
So depending upon how long these children are on these medications that were not designed for this, it may have caused a significant amount of damage to them already. Many of them will suffer that for a lifetime, but stair-stepping them off of those drugs will hopefully start the healing process and allow their bodies to avoid such things as permanent sterilization, total loss of certain body parts, bone loss, depression, and other harms that currently are side effects of those medications. So giving them time to stair-step off of these will hopefully avoid those dangers.
Representative Harris.
In reading this language, it specifically excludes intersex people, cosmetic surgeries, and other practices. What made you specifically focus on those who are transitioning or transgender youth?
Leader Lambert.
There has long been certain medical procedures that are definitely medically and physically necessary for folks that have diagnosed medical conditions that are physical in their manifestation. What we are dealing with here are issues of the heart, issues of the mind, mental health diagnosis of gender dysphoria and body dysphoria that hits little boys and little girls alike. And again, the scientific studies on that shows that
that's
mental health
exactly
treatment,
what it does.
love and support for those
This was
children,
never about
and yes,
kids.
just time many times allows those children to live a full life. And when they become adults, they can pick their path on whatever they would like to do as adults. But as children, they're in such a difficult and dynamic time that we're just saying, look, we're going to protect these children from life-altering procedures. But there are definitely medical conditions that are exempted from this bill because those are, again, medical conditions that have been recognized for decades where these medications actually are very helpful to intervene in those circumstances.
Representative Harris.
So typically, puberty blockers are to put a pause on any part of the transition process to allow, in most times, a young person to have the opportunity to make that decision when they do get to of age of 18. I have to say, as the only, this is becoming an odd piece of legislation. This one, the one before, some of the ones that we're going to see coming up, and as the only openly LGBTQ person in the Tennessee legislature, this is becoming something that's, I don't even talk about LGBTQ issues as much as some of you all do in this space. And it's becoming not only weird, but suspect. And we have
Out of order.
We have 3 other not openly LGBTQ Republican colleagues of mine who can't really open up their mouth and speak freely about their situation.
Whoa.
Because they're hiding as well. And so I say that
I didn't know
because
that.
young people who are uncomfortable with who they are
Whoa.
and can't speak
He
on
just
behalf of themselves
outed
of
people
like us in this legislature.
That's news, folks.
And so my
Wow.
question is, how are we going to address the mental health of the young people
Oh my
who
God.
we're going to be affecting with this legislation? How are we going to make sure that
I didn't know
suicide
that.
is not an option for these young people who are going to be affected by
Oh.
this legislation?
That was a strong choice by Tory right there.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's just not scientifically accurate. There is not a pause button that you can put on puberty. There are medications that can greatly affect the development of a child's body, and it many times can last a lifetime. So there's no way to just pause nature. So unfortunately, that's just not accurate. As to the other, thank you for your comments.
All right. Representative Clemens, you were on that list.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Leader, thank you for this legislation, your attempts to provide explanation. You know, we often look for common ground on issues difficult like this that directly affect Tennessee families and children. And based on what I have heard and what I've read and throughout this entire process, it appears, and based on the amendment vote, my amendment previously, Amendment 4, it appears that we have found some common ground on prohibiting surgical procedures on minors for the purpose intended in your legislation. Now, I am seriously concerned that the only area where we cannot find compromise is the insistence on prohibiting the hormone treatments and puberty blockers. And the reason for that is because those are reversible. So your statements earlier about not wanting our youth who, in your words, are going through, teenage years and a difficult time, and in your words, maybe confused, which I don't necessarily agree with. It seemed to me the theme of your concerns were the irreversible nature of these treatments. But the only area of disagreement we have here is the hormone and puberty blockers, which are reversible. And so I would ask the sponsor to meet us in the middle on this issue. Let's prohibit these irreversible surgical medical procedures on children under 18. But when they lose the opportunity to get that hormone or puberty blocker treatment, that in a way is irreversible, because it's going to be too late for them if, when they become an adult, they make that decision for themselves. And if we're going to protect individual liberty and privacy for families and facilitate healthcare, I would ask the sponsor, please meet us in the middle and remove that hormone and puberty blocker treatment, and let's just prohibit that surgical medical procedure. And I would ask the leader to please respond and let me know why that's not possible.
Lear Lambert.
Thank you, and sir, thank you for what I hope will be your support of part of this bill. And I know it's easy to look at the outward effects of a double mastectomy. on a young lady and how devastating that is. And we heard testimony from young ladies that had gone through that. That's devastating to see their testimony and hear their testimony on what that was like. That was happening right here in Tennessee, not in large numbers, but it absolutely was. And I've spoken to some of the medical providers that were conducting that type of surgery. So I do hope that is something we would all agree on. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, under this administration, which it is probably not much of a reach to say that you might support this particular administration, said this. They added a warning label for puberty-blocking hormones to monitor patients for a number of side effects that are very debilitating. And then it says this: these hormones, puberty blockers, have FDA approval only for the treatment of precocious puberty, not gender dysphoria in pediatric patients. They are not approved for halting normally timed puberty. Additionally, many scientific agencies, both in the U.S. and internationally, do not recommend medical transition for youth because the research claiming to show positive effects for cross-sex hormones or surgery is methodologically flawed and not scientifically reliable. The limitations of these studies include lack of control groups, small sample sizes, recruitment bias, non-generalizable study populations, short follow-up times, and high numbers lost to follow-up. However, studies finding negative outcomes for medical transition tend to be of adequate scientific quality. In other words, reliable studies have shown harmful effects. Watchful waiting is the option recommended by many scientific agencies. It means deferring transgender interventions for gender-confused children or youth for an extended time during which counseling can occur.
I'm getting all kinds of texts from people who are like, did Tori just say that shit? Yeah, he did.
Waiting to your
Wow,
18 to
Tori.
make a life-altering decision. These medications
You could see him
are
kind of
not designed
pause.
for this. They're just not. And so
Lambert
whether it's
did
a
not go to
surgery
medical
or
school.
it's a
Thank you
chemical
for asking.
castration, it is still a lifelong harm to these children, just like a double mastectomy is.
Representative Clemens?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My time's going to run out. The science is contested on this, and I would.
Thank you. Representative Grills?
He's going to call previous
Thank you,
question.
Mr. Speaker. Over the past month or so, I've heard several accusations several things being said about those who oppose this bill are somehow showing courage. I just want to publicly thank you, leader, for the courage you have shown.
Oh, how
to be a
brave,
tip of the
Rusty.
spear, run this thing through, be unwavering, and be a leader for our cause.
Oh,
Thank you, sir.
some slurping from Rusty.
Representative Warner's next.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Call previous.
Yeah,
question.
of course. Warner just always
Previously
calls the previous
called.
question.
Objection?
He just
Don't see enough. We're voting. All
Here it
those
comes.
in favor of Senate Bill 1, when the vote aye, when the bell
Here
rings.
comes the
All those
vote.
opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 7716 nays.
Senate Bill 1, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. I objection to the motion. Reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 66 by Leader Lambert, Representative Butler, and others relative to home health services. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 0248.
Representative Butler moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 248 without objection. So ordered. Representative Butler.
I move passage of Senate Bill 0248 on third and final consideration.
Representative Butler moves past Senate Bill 248 on third and final consideration. Second, Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Butler, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is very simple and really is an
All right,
example of
folks.
what we really should be doing up here. Is
I hope that
simplifying
was
government.
helpful.
We're moving
Nothing surprising,
responsibilities
although I will
from
say
one department to another department.
77
avoid
votes
duplication of
for,
services.
hang on, let me mute
And
this.
so it's really that simple.
77 votes for the trans youth healthcare ban means that some Democrats voted for it. So I am going to find out who that was so that you guys know what happened. And which of the 17 previous noes voted in favor? Yeah, that's the next question. So I will find that out for you. Let's see. And keep an eye on the holler pages. We will post that when we find out who that was. And no surprises here. Both those passed. Look out for clips and hate marches on in Tennessee. Thanks for joining us. Make sure to drop us a note. Let us know if you enjoyed the broadcast this way. We'll do more of it in certain circumstances if you did. Appreciate you being here. Talk to you soon.